Right now, millions of people are driving past one of the most meticulously engineered, artificially sustained battlegrounds on Earth.
Oh, yeah.
And they just call it the bushes.
Right. Just the bushes.
I mean, you get in your car, you focus on the traffic ahead, and the greenery slipping by in your peripheral vision just becomes this complete blur.
Totally.
You treat it as background static. You are just completely unaware of the intense, deliberate biological conflict happening, like literally inches from your tires.
Well, we treat that greenery as urban wallpaper because our brains are basically designed to filter out the predictable.
Right.
When you are navigating a complex, high-speed environment like a highway, your cognitive load is just maxed out.
Oh, absolutely.
So your brain desperately wants the periphery to be safe, standard, and, ignorable.
But the moment you actually stop and force yourself to examine that green blur, the illusion of a passive natural landscape completely falls apart.
Yeah, it really does.
We are looking at an environment that is entirely manufactured. It is this incredible level of hidden intentionality hiding in plain sight on every single median, intersection, and highway shoulder that you pass.
Exactly.
And that brings us to the mission of our deep dive today. We want to permanently change how you view the most ordinary, mundane parts of your daily commute.
It is going to completely flip your perspective.
Our source material today is this fascinating dispatch from a blog series titled Notes on Gardening. We are specifically looking at part 942, written by a wonderfully observant individual named Ang, and it was published today, July 1st, 2026.
It is such a remarkable piece of writing. I mean, it is a brief field note, but it is incredibly dense with insight for the constructed environments we move through every single day.
Yeah, it really is.
Ang just has this ability to strip away the assumptions we make about public space.
Okay, let's unpack this. Ang has developed a highly specific, almost counterintuitive hobby.
Yeah, you could say that.
Normally, when you go to an open garden or a commercial planned nursery, you are looking for a centerpiece.
Right, like the star of the show.
Exactly. You want the rare orchid or like the most vibrant, perfectly blooming rose bush to showcase in your front yard. But Ang goes to these exact same nurseries and nearby open gardens purely to study the mundane.
Which is wild.
Right. Ang actively seeks out the typical landscaping work, deliberately observing the standard approaches that are most often deployed on just, well, mundane roadsides.
That inverted approach to observation is really profound because roadside landscaping is an environment inherently built for passive consumption.
Mm-hmm.
Landscape architects design these spaces to be digested at 50 miles per hour.
Wow. Yeah.
They rely on broad strokes and massive washes of color meant to break up the monotony of the concrete without ever actually demanding the driver's active focus.
Right. It's just there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So by slowing down to a dead stop in an open garden to study what is designed to be a high-speed blur, Ang is basically breaking the intended user experience of the landscape.
It makes me think of like a high-end film director walking right past an art house cinema and intentionally going to a local car dealership just to watch them shoot a low-budget television commercial.
Oh, that is a great comparison.
Right. The director isn't looking for high art. They are studying the brutal efficiency of the lighting setups. They are looking for the mechanics of utility.
Yes.
So we normally treat roadside plants as background blur. What does it take to actually stop and study the typical?
Well, it requires overriding our deepest neurological wiring.
Really?
Yeah. Human beings are biologically programmed to seek out novelty. We naturally scan our environments for the loud, the dangerous, the new, and the extraordinary.
That makes sense.
So when a visual stimulus is categorized by the brain as typical, our cognitive software essentially tags it as safe to ignore.
Wow.
It's an evolutionary survival mechanism to save energy.
Right. Save the brain power for the actual threats.
Exactly. To stand in front of a completely standard municipal planting arrangement and analyze it actively requires a tremendous amount of discipline.
I bet.
Ang is choosing to observe structural patterns over individual details, completely ignoring the beauty of a single flower petal to reverse engineer the overall visual strategy of the urban planner.
And the moment you apply that level of discipline, a very deliberate, calculated pattern emerges out of that green blur.
It really pops out at you.
You realize it is not a random assortment of shrubs at all. It is highly tactical, specifically regarding the aggressive manipulation of color.
Yeah, the overarching visual strategy of the roadside relies on a very specific type of forced perspective.
And Ang zeroes in on this specific formula. There is a distinct, ubiquitous trend in this roadside landscaping.
Yep.
Designers almost universally combine exactly two plant species with violently contrasting colors.
It's everywhere once you notice it.
That is the baseline formula. They put these two contrasting species side by side to achieve what Ang describes as specific effects.
Right.
Now, here is a detail in the source material that genuinely bothers me.
Oh.
Yeah, Ang explicitly refuses to identify the specific plant species in the post. The botanical names are completely bypassed. I have to push back on Ang's choice here. We're doing a deep dive into notes on gardening, and they aren't even naming the plants. That feels lazy. How are we supposed to understand the design without knowing the species?
Oh, see, I disagree. What's fascinating here is that the omission of the botanical names is actually the most crucial analytical choice Ang makes in the entire piece.
Wait, really? How so?
Because by withholding the Latin names, Ang forces the reader to strip away all botanical biases.
Okay, I'm listening.
If the text told us we were looking at a specific coleus next to a juniperus, our brains would immediately shift into the realm of botany. We would start thinking about root systems, soil pH, watering schedules, all of that.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Right. By refusing to name them, Ang reduces the living plants to a designer's medium. They are no longer individual living organisms. They are just raw swatches of paint.
But isn't it a bit frustrating that Ang didn't name the plants? Or does that actually prove the point? Maybe the species doesn't matter at all to the roadside aesthetic, only the color contrast does.
That is exactly the point. Ang is arguing that in the context of roadside design, the taxonomy is completely irrelevant. The only thing that matters is the visual weight and the mechanics of stark contrast.
So, treating living organisms purely as structural pixels, a pixel of bright yellow forced against a pixel of deep purple.
Exactly. And consider the optics of driving. When a human is moving at 50 miles per hour, the visual processing system undergoes a massive shift.
Okay.
The cones in the center of your retina, which process fine detail and subtle color variations, they just cannot keep up with the speed of the foreground.
Right, everything is moving too fast.
Yeah. So your brain shifts reliance to the rods in your peripheral vision, which are highly sensitive to motion and, most importantly, stark contrast.
So, if a landscape architect were to plant 10 different subtly shaded green and brown plants together, the human eye driving past wouldn't be able to process the nuance at all.
Not a chance.
It would just register as a muddy, undefined soup.
The subtle variations would completely wash out. To create any sort of visual impact or structural boundary for a driver, designers must rely on maximum visual contrast using the absolute minimum number of elements.
Whoa!
A shockingly bright lime green leaf placed directly against a dark burgundy leaf creates a sharp, unmistakable edge.
And that contrast registers instantly in the brain, even at high speeds.
Instantly. Those specific effects Ang mentions are actually a tool for managing the visual rhythm of the road. It gives the eye clear, trackable boundaries without requiring direct focus.
Okay, that makes perfect sense on a digital screen or, a painter's canvas. But the medium here is alive.
Right, it is biology.
There is a glaring flaw in relying on contrasting living things to create architectural edges. Unlike paint, these elements grow, they shift, and they compete.
Oh, constantly.
To maintain that perfect, sharp edge of contrast, to keep that specific effect intact, you have to fight a continuous battle against nature's overwhelming urge to grow wild and blur those carefully drawn lines.
Yeah, the entire endeavor is basically an attempt to freeze a dynamic biological system into a static visual state.
Which is impossible, right?
Well, it carries a massive hidden cost.
Right. Ang transitions from observing the visual design to observing the physical reality of keeping that design alive.
The maintenance.
Yes, the maintenance. To maintain the growth and the precise shape of these contrasting plants, they require intense, regular pruning. This is the exact opposite of a self-sustaining ecosystem.
Totally.
And Ang makes a brilliant observation about the nature of this specific contrast. The contrast isn't just in the colors. There is a massive biological disparity in the hardiness of the plants themselves.
Right. This is a huge point.
Ang specifically observed that in these pairings, one of the plants is incredibly hardy, while the contrasting plant is entirely too fragile to survive with little or no maintenance.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this observation exposes the ultimate paradox of modern roadside landscaping.
Okay, lay it on me.
The psychological goal of these green spaces is to make the urban commuter feel like they are passing through a thriving natural environment. It is supposed to feel lush and organic.
Right, like nature is just flourishing right there on the highway.
Exactly. But the reality is that it is a highly engineered, artificially sustained biological performance. It requires constant, invisible human intervention to avoid immediate ecological collapse.
So what does this all mean? It reminds me of the effortless messy hair trend.
Oh yeah, the messy bun.
Right. You see someone with hair that looks perfectly windblown, natural, and carefree. But to achieve that effortless look, they actually spend an hour in front of a mirror with a blow dryer, a flat iron, and like 3 expensive texturizing sprays.
And half a bottle of hairspray.
Exactly, forcing every single strand into a very specific frozen position. That is what this roadside landscaping is. It is the effortless, messy hair of urban design.
That is a perfect way to put it.
But if you pair a hardy plant right next to a fragile one just for color contrast, aren't you essentially designing a maintenance nightmare?
Yes. The landscape architects are basically engineering a direct biological conflict.
Why do that, though?
To understand why, we have to look at the biology of plant pigmentation.
Okay.
The plants chosen for those sudden, vibrant pops of color,
Yeah.
the bright yellows, the vivid reds, the variegated whites, they often achieve those colors because they lack chlorophyll.
Wait, chlorophyll's the green stuff, right?
Right. Chlorophyll is the green pigment responsible for photosynthesis, which is how a plant produces energy to survive.
Okay, I follow.
So a plant with deep purple or bright yellow leaves is essentially operating with a compromised solar panel.
Oh, wow.
It produces less energy, grows slower, and it is inherently more fragile to environmental stress.
Well, the dark green plant it is paired with is just absolutely packed with chlorophyll.
Exactly.
It is a biological powerhouse operating at maximum efficiency.
Now, place those two plants in the environment of a typical roadside, which is arguably one of the most hostile biomes on the planet.
I mean, the heat alone.
Brutal heat reflecting off the asphalt, severely compacted soil, constant exposure to carbon monoxide exhaust, road salt in the winter, and totally erratic watering schedules.
Yeah.
It is a brutal microclimate.
So you take a fragile plant that is already biologically handicapped by its own vivid color, and you throw it into this hostile asphalt oven.
Yep. Then, purely to achieve that sharp visual contrast for the passing cars, you plant a rugged, highly aggressive, maximum efficiency green plant just inches away from it.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
In a natural, unmanaged setting, this is a very short story, the hardy plant would immediately outcompete the fragile one.
It would just take over.
Completely.
Yeah.
Its vigorous root system would steal all the available water and nutrients from the compacted soil. Its robust leaves would grow over the top, completely blocking the sun.
And the fragile plant would just starve.
It would starve and die very quickly, and the carefully planned visual contrast would simply vanish.
The green blur would consume the design entirely. The only thing preventing that natural biological conclusion is human labor.
Exactly. The constant, endless pruning. The unseen maintenance crews out there in the heat, forcibly trimming back the aggressive green plant, carefully tending to the fragile colored one.
Wow.
They are desperately trying to artificially suppress the biological reality of the space so the design doesn't fall apart. The tension Ang observed between the hardy and the fragile relies 100% on human intervention to survive and keep their shape.
Reading Ang's notes completely reframes the entire concept of the commute. You stop seeing plants, and you start seeing the massive invisible labor engine required just to keep the illusion alive.
Ang has effectively pulled back the curtain on the heavy management of our peripheral world.
Yeah, they really have.
We are conditioned to view the built environment as the concrete structures, the steel bridges, and the asphalt roads. We categorize the plants as the unbuilt natural environment.
Right, the stuff that's just there.
But Ang's observation proves that the roadside plants are just as constructed, just as deliberately engineered, and forcibly maintained as the highway itself. They're living architecture.
Which brings us entirely back to you, the listener, and your everyday experience. Because this short 940-second field note from Ang, published today, well, it changes the fundamental way you will interact with your world.
It really does.
Think about your very next commute. Tomorrow morning, when you were stuck in gridlock traffic or, when you were just walking past a corner median on your way to get a coffee, you aren't just going to see a blur of green background static anymore.
No, you'll see right through it.
You are going to see the deliberate, forced contrast. You will spot the aggressive, dark green leaves artificially held back from consuming the fragile, bright ones.
Yep.
You will see those specific effects manipulating your peripheral vision, and most importantly, you will recognize the hidden labor. You will see the ghost of the constant pruning required just to keep those fragile plants from being overrun by their hardy neighbors. You will finally see the sheer artifice in the typical.
This raises an important question, though, as we consider the long-term implications of Ang's field notes on our infrastructure.
Yeah.
If our typical roadside designs rely so heavily on pairing the highly hardy with the incredibly fragile just to force a specific, fleeting color contrast,
Right.
what happens to our engineered world the moment we stop pruning?
Oh, wow.
If municipal budgets are slashed, or the maintenance crews simply stop coming, does the hardy immediately consume the fragile, erasing our carefully planned contrast forever?
Just gone.
Does nature instantly reclaim and rewrite the design we forced upon it?
That is a silent, slow-motion battle between human design and natural growth happening on every single highway median.
Yeah, it is.
Keep that battle in mind the next time you are sitting at a red light. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. It has been an absolute pleasure unpacking these field notes with you.
Keep questioning the things you've been taught to ignore.
See you next time on the Deep Dive.